All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Grace Meng, also the chair of our Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. And we are back for another episode of Spill the Tea with our amazing CAPAC members. Today, we are so honored to have one of our longtime leaders, not just in our AAPI NH community, but for the progressive and for our Democratic Party nationwide. We have Pramila Jayapal, who really needs no introduction. But Pramila, I wanted to chat with you a little bit. You have truly been one of the strongest voices for our working families in Congress. And President Trump calls himself a champion for the forgotten man. And he believes he had a mandate from the last election. But his record in the last few months seemed to tell a different story. I think many of us remember the photo of so many billionaires who stood behind him at his inauguration in front of the whole country and world. Wanted to check in and see, who do you think is benefiting from his policies so far?
Yeah, well, Grace, it's so good to see you, and thank you for your leadership at CAPAC. Look, it's really clear right in front of us that Trump and Republicans are working for the billionaires and not for poor and working people in this country. And you just have to look at a couple of things that they've done, right? They slashed funding for Medicaid, $1 trillion in their big bad betrayal bill. They slashed funding for SNAP, the biggest cut to SNAP, about $186 billion to SNAP in that same bill. And the indiscriminate tariffs that they're levying on people have just driven up the cost of everyday items. So all those promises that were made during the campaign about making life more affordable for people on day one, remember that? Like, we're going to lower the cost of inflation on day one. We're going to lower prices for people on day one.
So when I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
The complete opposite of that has happened, and life has just become incredibly unaffordable for poor and working people. And during the shutdown, we saw the worst example of this is the extreme lengths to which Donald Trump went to illegally prevent November SNAP payments, that's basic food assistance of $6 a day, to hungry people. He went to these extreme lengths to illegally try to stop those payments, even disobeying court orders in the process. And so when you look at what he has done, he's prioritized himself and he's prioritized his billionaire buddies, right? He's renovating his bathroom. He's spending $300 million on the destruction of the West Wing. He's holding this incredible, disgusting, party at Mar-a-Lago while people are hurting. And he's talking about it all as inflicting maximum pain on Americans during the shutdown. So he's working for the billionaires. And I think the stat that always sticks with me on this is 906 billionaires in America control double the amount of wealth as the entire bottom 50% of households in America. So they don't need more tax breaks, that's for sure.
Yeah, that statistic is so painful and heartbreaking, especially in the midst of this shutdown. And like you mentioned, the comparing and contrasting of the visual of the president building a grander ballroom while our constituents in both Republican, Democratic districts, and everyone in between are standing on lines for at food pantries.
Yeah.
It's just heartbreaking. And I know, honestly, some people in our own Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities supported him. They thought that he would make their life more affordable. But you are right, providing all these examples that the Trump administration has not delivered on those promises for our communities. I wanted to go back for a sec on healthcare. November, as we all know, is the start of the open enrollment period, when millions of Americans will be choosing their health insurance plans for 2026. Many through the Affordable Health Care Act marketplace. Why are Americans seeing their premiums skyrocket? I know a lot of New Yorkers in my home state, for example, have gotten letters saying
Yeah.
that their premiums will go up.
Yeah. And the most salient and immediate thing that people need to do is Republicans shut down the government. They've been on vacation for 41 days. They've refused to negotiate with Democrats around the extension of what we call the ACA tax credits. These are tax credits that help millions of Americans afford healthcare that's bought on the Affordable Care Act exchange marketplace across the country. And so that means that 22 million Americans, I've got thousands in my district, I know you do too, are facing these skyrocketing premiums. And those premium notices just went out. So most people are starting to see this. But just as an example, a 50-year-old couple that's making $95,000 a year combined could see a $17,000 premium increase in 2026. And the thing that we have to understand is people are going to make choices about this, right? If these tax credits don't get renewed and healthcare becomes so unaffordable, then people are going to have to choose, and they're going to choose to not be insured and to pay their rent or pay for their food or pay the other expenses for their kids, right? And so the uninsurance rates amongst adults between the ages of 19 and 35 are projected to go up by 25%. And if those uninsurance rates go up, and if people don't have preventive health care, if they, even if they get insurance, but it's at just for catastrophic insurance, it means they're going to end up using emergency rooms and other emergency services, which we know are super expensive. And so that's going to raise the cost of healthcare for everyone. And so Republicans have just been incalcitrant. The central demand for Democrats during the shutdown was save healthcare, extend the tax credits, reverse the cuts on Medicare. And there was a deal that was put forward that Republicans rejected, to even just extend the tax credits for 1 year. And they refused to do that. And it's sickening because their constituents are some of the Republican states have huge numbers of people who are going to see these premiums rise. And I think that they're doing nothing to fix this and everything they can to just make pinky promises about holding a vote on the Affordable Care Act once the government opens. And that is a real problem because their pinky promises have never turned out to be anything real.
Yeah, I mean, it's just at the very least disappointing. This is not helping people's pocketbooks, lowering costs. It's certainly not helping the economy.
Yeah.
And, one more issue I wanted to chat about. Speaking of the economy, one issue that you've been such a leader on for so many years, even prior to this administration, is the need for immigration reform. And we know that a lot of people in our communities supported this president because they believed he would just go after violent criminals and magically, improve public safety. But instead, what we've seen is that he's literally ripping apart families, deporting law-abiding residents, even some who are citizens, American citizens, without due process. Does any of this help Americans?
No, and I feel very badly for people who believe the things he said, right? And wanted to see an immigration system that is legal and that is fair. And he said he was going to go after the worst of the worst. That is just a blatant lie. And if you look right now at what's happening, nearly 65% of people who have been detained have zero criminal record, and most of them have these minor offenses like traffic violations. And we've had so many NHPIs of all legal statuses, right? People who are here with legal visas, people who are permanent residents, people who are US citizens, who have been detained and who have been deported or threatened to be deported. We had a Filipino auntie who's been here for 25 years. She's a legal permanent resident, and she was picked up for a very minor offense that she did her time for a long time ago, like 20 years ago, and ICE targeted her. And so this is what we're seeing over and over again, is that Trump isn't going after the worst of the worst. Now he's not even saying that that's what he's doing. He's going after all immigrants of any immigration status, including those US citizens. And so, Grace, I've been hosting a series of shadow hearings called Kidnapped and Disappeared to raise the alarm on how unbelievably lawless and cruel Trump's immigration actions are. And we're bringing in both experts to testify, but also people who are directly affected, because it's just important that people understand this is another of a series of broken promises. The Trump administration, Stephen Miller, all of them have just been attacking immigrants on every level, canceling student visas, going after people for free speech, going after people for, events that happened 20 years ago that they've done their time for, and of course, going after undocumented immigrants who have literally committed no crime and are just being detained and deported.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate your voice within our caucus for our community across the country, and for so many. Thank you for joining us and for sharing your experience and your insight. And we will fight another day for our community.
Yes, we will. We're already banded together to make sure we deliver for the American people. Thank you, Grace, for your leadership.